are live.
Hi, everybody. It's Lisa Sapp running against Susan Collins under ranked choice voting here in Maine. Thanks for joining our live stream this evening. It's a pleasure to talk with you. This is a good way to do a town hall so that so many people, about myself, and a little bit about our campaign before we start taking questions. People have been sending questions all day, and you can still submit questions on whatever platform you're watching this live stream. Please put them in the chat or the comments, and our team will feed them to me during the course of this town hall. And we have 26 more days left in this exciting campaign. Wow, what an election season it's been, 2020. Who knows what will happen next? We've been working very hard here in Maine to build up our volunteers, and we've gotten lots and lots of new volunteers recently, which is very encouraging. I decided to run for the U.S. Senate more than a year ago now because I was very concerned about the people around me in the 2nd District of Maine where I lived that were really struggling economically. I was a school teacher for 25 years in rural Maine. I was a reading interventionist at the end of my teaching career. We're really right on the verge of economic collapse all the time. Even if they had work, even if they had a car to get to work, they were one accident or one illness away from the complete, collapse of their economic arrangements at home. When a child or when a student is sleeping in a camper with no heat, or when a child comes to school and knows that their mom has no food in the cupboard to feed them, it affects their education quite a bit. Their basic needs are not being met, so they cannot really focus on academic learning. I saw this as a growing problem over the 25 years in Maine, down to Portland to join in some activities there. I noticed that the same thing was happening in our more populous and considered to be more affluent parts of Maine. People were really struggling. People had student debt that was beyond anything that they could hope to get a job here in Maine to pay off. The percentage of their income just for housing that often was substandard housing, and food insecurity was threatening, and also a lot of people are just unhoused. So when the pandemic hit, things got dramatically worse. People were told, just stay home, experiencing homelessness. And I decided during the pandemic, gee, this is really getting well, but people understand, wow, why would universal health care be important? During the pandemic shutdown, something like 1 in 4 workers in Maine lost their job. And with it, they often lost their health insurance. That tying employment and health insurance together is not a good idea. And also why your health care, my health care, is only as good as the health care of the person who's standing next to me in line at the post office. It's a pandemic. We're all trying to figure out how not to catch the COVID-19 disease. And if everybody doesn't have adequate health care, it becomes much more difficult and much endemic. So those are some of the reasons that I decided to run for the U.S. Senate. A very big reason is that it is ranked choice voting. So we have an opportunity where the incumbent, Senator Susan Collins, is the most unpopular, has enabled the current occupant of the White House to do a number of things that people in Maine were very unhappy about. It started Brett Kavanaugh to advance to the Supreme Court. Senator Collins did not even stand up and demand a full hearing about the fairly logical or fairly credible charges of sexual assault against him. They rushed the hearing through and put him on the Supreme Court. That is where most voters in Maine have told me, Susan Collins lost me at that point. I may have voted for in the past, they would say, but no more, because their reproductive rights and the reproductive rights of the women and the girls that they love were very, very important to them. And they saw this as a big threat to the health of women in the country. Subsequently to that, they passed, it basically took from the poor to give to the already wealthy. Almost no one in Maine, except very wealthy people, benefited from that tax law. So that was another thing that made people very unhappy with the incumbent. Then came impeachment. The House and Senate refused to convict. And one of the things that Senator Collins was very famous for saying in response to her vote not to pursue the impeachment was, well, I think that he's learned his lesson. Again, events after that have shown that, in fact, what he learned was the Senate isn't going to stop me. The House will try, the Senate won't do anything, and I can basically get away with whatever I want. People in Maine are very unhappy with that situation for the most part. So there was a big opportunity here to run as an independent Green, bringing forth the policies that the majority of people in Maine want. They want universal health care. They want Medicare for all. I am the only candidate in this 4-person race who stands for Medicare for all. I want an improved version of Medicare for all that would cover dental care, mental health, vision, hearing, the kind of, I want to get away from what Dr. Flowers, one of our webinar presenters, called body parts medicine. That isn't useful for people. Here in Maine, many people call our existing healthcare system the Unaffordable Care Act. And the Democrat that was nominated to run against Susan Collins doesn't stand for Medicare for all, and in fact stands for making the Unaffordable Care Act more affordable. I'm here to tell you, in the 2nd District around Solon, Maine, where I taught school and where I live, it doesn't matter how affordable you make for-profit health insurance, people aren't going to be able to afford to use it. They can't pay the premiums, they can't make the co-pays, they can't meet the deductible. So this was a situation that I felt very strongly I could respond to by offering to stand up for the policy need. The other thing that I've been working on for years here, long before I decided to run for office, was climate and militarism. The climate emergency is an emergency. This summer, we have seen it accelerate. The whole West Coast being on fire. There's been a prolonged and severe drought in Maine, which has affected farmers quite a bit. And the Gulf of Maine is the fastest warming body of water in the world's oceans. We've been worried about climate. Young people have been looking at my generation saying, what part of climate emergency do you not get? While people talk about, oh, let's be carbon neutral goals that are not responding in an urgent way to an emergency. So because I have been very involved with the conversion campaign here in Maine for many years, working to turn our industrial capacity here in Maine from building warships for the Navy, only this one client that they build for, and they're very expensive and they're very, very bad for the environment. The Pentagon is the biggest polluter on the planet. It consumes more greenhouse gas than any other organization worldwide. If you rank it as a nation on greenhouse gas emissions, there are 140 nations with lower greenhouse gas emissions than the Pentagon. So for years, I had been working with a coalition of people all over the state to say, let's stop building weapon systems. That is the first win for climate because they're very, very polluting. So let's stop doing something that's driving climate crisis. Instead, let's take that federal funding and convert it to building solutions to climate crisis or things that would mitigate rail passenger train system for Maine. We have very little public transit here. There's a little bit in a couple of cities, nothing to connect those cities. Stop doing something that's driving Maine. We're in our climate. So if we were to build a train system instead of warships, that would be a second win for climate. We've stopped building something that hurts the climate. We've started building something that helps climate. We could also be building clean energy systems. We could be building offshore wind, the Gulf of Maine again, or wind to generate electricity. We could be building solar power systems. We could be exploring thermal and tidal systems. With federal contracting, these workers could be building some reason that most of our congressional reps, whether they have a D, an R, or an I after their name, reject this idea, as they always say, but jobs, that's the biggest Bath Iron Works. It's the biggest employer in Maine. But they know, and they refuse to acknowledge, that Ecosystems isn't actually a very good jobs program in terms of the number of jobs created. You will create 50% additional jobs, and these are good union jobs, you know, with benefits, full-time jobs that you could support yourself on. You would create from building warships to building clean energy systems. And economist research at UMass Amherst has repeatedly shown that this is the case. So that's a win for jobs. When you ask people in Maine what they're most concerned about now since the pandemic hit, their number one concern is healthcare. So Medicare for All is our program for that. Their second concern is jobs, and their third concern is the economy. So a Green New Deal, a demilitarized Green New Deal, would address those very important issues for Mainers. Maine has a kind of chronically depressed economy. Jobs are hard to come by. Many people still make their living working in the woods. They harvest lumber. You know, climate change and global warming is really hurting Maine's forests. Many of our species of trees are not doing well. They've been attacked by insects that are coming because the climate has changed. It's a problem. And the other thing that's been happening under climate change is that we're starting to have diseases in Maine that we didn't really have before. Tick-borne diseases, because we now have an epidemic of Lyme disease and other types of diseases that are carried by ticks. All these things are affecting Maine and the ability of people to make a living. The warming in the Gulf of Maine has really affected the fisheries. It's affected lobster fishermen. It's affected other fishermen that harvest different species. So we are responding to a lot of the problems that are facing Maine right now by a demilitarized Green New Deal. The other part of that Green New Deal that's really exciting to me is that it provides for regenerative agriculture. This means investing in food production practices that improve it rather than loading it up with pesticides and lots of chemical fertilizers and making the land worse by farming it. Food insecurity could become an issue in investing in our farmers and making sure that we're helping them meet our food needs in the coming years. The other part of a Green New Deal that's really exciting to me is that it would provide for consumer-owned and operated utilities, such as electricity. Right now, we have a proposal called the CMP Corridor, or New England so-called Clean Connect, Clean Energy Connect, that would bring very dirty hydropower that puts lots of methane into the environment down from Quebec. They want to cut a 57-mile swath through the Maine woods to run a high transmission electric line to hook up to an existing line in central Maine. And then they're going to sell that power to the state of Massachusetts, allegedly to meet their clean energy goals. it isn't clean energy. I've been to a talk by an MIT professor who's studied this twice now, where he's shown that the methane produced when you flood an area the size of Vermont to make the hydropower, that the greenhouse gas emissions of that kind of hydropower are far worse than even a coal-fired electricity plant. So having a consumer-owned and operated electric grid here in Maine, electric utility, rather than one right now we have Maine, and that's made a deal with Hydro-Quebec, which is based in Canada, to make millions, tens of millions of dollars off cutting down the Maine woods. Consumers in Maine don't want that, don't need it, and they also know that when our power goes out, we have often knock the power out. The consumer-owned and operated utilities, which do exist in Maine in certain places, their outages are shorter. They pay a lower rate to begin with for their electricity, but the multinational company, they're just looking at their bottom line. They're not, consumers would make much better decisions about their electric needs and how to generate the power to meet those needs than a profit-driven multinational company. Also, internet. Oh, let me talk about broadband access. So I'm here in Bath, Maine. Rural is absolutely beautiful. I love it there. But when I began campaigning, I realized that I could not Zoom from where I live. There just wasn't enough internet under any service that I could get in Solon, Maine, to actually conduct a Zoom call. So luckily I have friends in Bath who have taken me in temporarily, and I've had to leave home, and my husband comes and visits me, once a week. But I think that internet, it has a huge effect on educational equity. When the schools shut down in mid-March and students were sent home to do distance learning, many families in Maine with students at home did not have broadband access, and they may even live in places where you can't get broadband access. That is an equity issue in education that really needs to be addressed. College students are dealing with it. K-12 students are working with it. Teachers working from home. It's an important issue for our state. And also, I think we all realize that small businesses with good, strong broadband connection, people could work from home and do a variety of jobs if they could count on their internet connection. So that would be huge. I would also add water. We have, Nestle as a multinational corporation in Maine trying to harvest our water too is not a good idea for the future of Maine. And we'd be much better off if our water districts were publicly owned and operated rather than being a for-profit enterprise. So I'm a school children. My husband and I, between us, have 5 grown children. We have 5 grandchildren. I am very worried about the future for them. What kind of planet will they have to live on? If we don't get busy right now and take some of these problems seriously and get moving, start to address some of the great questions that are coming in. I started out as a Green Party candidate seeking ballot access. And we started the very first day we could do that, but the rules in Maine are onerous for third-party candidates. They have been written to discourage a third-party candidate from gaining ballot access. So after it became evident that that was the case, so now I am an independent, not affiliated with any party, and then gained ballot access in one day. A big team of volunteers fanned out 9,000 signatures in one day to get my name on the ballot. We only needed 4,000 certified registered voters. So that was a big win and really kind of set the tone for the rest of this campaign. We have exceeded our expectations numerous times, and it's because of folks like you that are listening in the audience that we've been able to do that. For one thing, we have raised over $160,000 over the course of a little more than a year now. That is more than any other green campaign in Maine has ever raised by a factor of about 10. And we also have, at this point, I believe, 1,400 different donors that have contributed to that campaign fund. We don't take donations. When I was still a Green, like all Green candidates, I swore to neither accept nor solicit donations from corporate lobbyists or corporate CEOs or the super PACs that launder corporate money so candidates can claim they don't take corporate money while actually taking it. So all of the money that we have collected to conduct our campaign has come from like contributing to our campaign or have done so in the past, and you can see our momentum now, and you'd like to contribute more, we would love to have you do that. Our website is Lisa for Maine, spelled out FOR, Maine.org. There's a donate button on it, and you can use that to either donate online or way. We also welcome volunteers. We have had a flood of new volunteers since the first two debates. There have been two debates so far that I've participated in, and people have given me very positive feedback after those debates. The Democrat and the Republican basically sniped at each other. The other independent candidate is a bit of a show, does a lot of unexpected things, but people have consistently said, wow, Lisa, you actually answered the questions. You actually talked about issues and told voters where you stand. So we've gotten lots of new volunteers, which is great. We do have staff, we do pay staff to work on the campaign, but we could never do this without a lot of volunteer help. So again, on our website, there's an action button. And if you click that, it will ask you, are you willing to volunteer? You could give us your contact to do what you've done in the past. We have phone banking, we have tabling, we have letters to the editor, campaign writing. There are many data jobs that you can help with, lots and lots of things to do. And if you would like to join our team, we have the best volunteers, we really do. We've had a great time working together as a team, and we have 26 more days to win this election. So let me talk a little bit about ranked choice voting before I take the first question. Ranked choice voting was passed by Mainers twice in referendum. So here in Maine, we have you can do voter referendums, and it took the legislature quite a while to enact those as law. And so in 2018, some of the elections were conducted using ranked choice voting. In the second district where I live, which is the more conservative, less populated, and more low-income part of Maine, we had Bruce Poliquin as our rep in Congress. He was a Republican. He was a Wall Street guy who was not very popular with voters because he never held town halls or met with constituents. He was kind of famous for ducking into the ladies' room to avoid journalism. Challenged by a Democrat, Jared Golden, who was in the Maine legislature, but not super well known. He's a younger guy and hadn't been in the legislature a very long time. And then there were two independent. When the first count of the first run of votes were done, the incumbent did not have a majority, but he was ahead. But he did not have 50% plus one vote. So the independent that had polled the lowest was crossed off the list, and they looked at voters who chose that candidate first. Who did they choose second? And they transferred those second choices to the other candidates. Now, did anyone have a majority? The answer was still those choices. That put Jared Golden ahead, and so the Democrats did precedent for what the potential of ranked choice voting is. You really can't be a spoiler in a ranked choice voting election. And if the incumbent happens to be an unpopular conservative, the presence of a strong progressive in the race, such as myself, increases the chance that you can unseat motivated to come vote for a kind of a centrist Democrat. And if someone ranks me first, they're very unlikely to rank Susan Collins, the incumbent, second. And if someone ranks the Democrat first, they're very unlikely to rank Susan Collins second. We have been recommending to our supporters that you rank Lisa first and then vote blue number 2. This is your safety vote. You can show with your first ranking what your values are. Treats climate emergency like an emergency. You want to forgive student debt and to make public higher education free, tuition free. You want to, stop the CMP corridor. You want to protect people's reproductive rights, reproductive health. And when you rank me first, you're showing those are the values that I want. Then you go, okay, but I really don't want Susan Collins to win. So for my safety vote, I'm going about the incumbent and the other independent in the race, who is a supporter of the current occupant of the White House. And, if that's what you want to support, then you can rank that person too. So that's kind of where we stand in the election. We are hearing many people have already voted because Maine has no excuse absentee ballots. So many people have gotten their absentee ballot, already marked it and turned it back into their town clerk, and have gone down to their town clerk or their city hall, and they have already voted. That's fairly unusual. It's because I think the pandemic is making people reluctant to vote in person on election day and be, inside with a large group of people. So they're taking the safe path, and so it's a very interesting season. We'll see what happens. I think many people have told me that they have ranked me first. Many people today told me when I was out in the field at a farmer's market in Yarmouth, I ranked you first. And that's good to hear. I think there's still many more votes to be cast. So we would love to have your first ranking if you're a Maine voter. And if you have another candidate that you prefer, we would love to have your second ranking, because that's how ranked choice voting works. We don't want to alienate the supporters of other candidates. We just want to say, here's what I stand for. If that's what you like to, show it with your ranking. Okay, I think it's time probably to turn and take some questions. So thank you for all these good questions that are coming in. Let's take this question from John Ford first. It's about ranked choice. You presented ranked choice voting as a method to avoid the spoiler role. This would refer to the fact that in the past, in a race where it wasn't ranked choice, people would claim that a progressive candidate maybe was pulling votes and would spoil the election so that the candidate that was less desired wins because the vote was split. Ranked choice voting does away with that danger, but it says, however, you only addressed half the ranked choice voting process. If no candidate receives more than 50% of the total votes in the first round. If a voter votes for you in the first round, you may be opening the door by casting a vote for you, who has very little chance of winning in the first round, for a candidate who is less desirable if an opposing candidate obtains more than 50% in the first round by a slim margin. I found your response to the ranked choice voting questions to be less than complete and misleading. I'm guessing that John Ford is referring to my answers in either the second debate, which there were ranked choice voting questions, or possibly I was on Maine Public yesterday those times. Let me answer you, John. Under ranked choice voting, it's mathematically impossible for voters who rank candidate A over candidate B to give a majority to candidates under ranked choice voting. Candidates can't win with a plurality, meaning they got more votes than someone else. They need a majority, and in Maine that's defined as 50% plus one vote would be a majority. Let's say first place votes are chocolates, and we have a 35 and Chris has 25. If we move 10 chocolates from Bill to Chris, now Chris has 35, Bill has 25, Amy still has 40. Moving chocolates from Bill to Chris doesn't give Amy any more chocolates. And in the exact same way, moving your first place any more first place votes. It's mathematically impossible for our voters to help Susan get a first round majority. In fact, we're making it harder for her to get a first round majority because we're bringing more voters out to vote. It's really important for all voters who want to replace Collins to understand this and use their power to rank their first and second choices. I hope that answered your question, John. I will also mention that our website, we have a page for ranked choice voting. I know that some people learn better by hearing things. Some people learn better by seeing things. Some people need, humor to connect with. If you go to our website, lisaformaine.org, and check out the ranked choice voting page, I think you'll find a variety of ways that ranked choice voting has been explained. The comedian Ron Placone made a short YouTube video that he shared with us. Ranked choice voting explained the criticism of ranked choice voting is so complicated. And he was like, haven't you ever gone to a restaurant and said, well, I really want the lobster roll, but if they're out of that, I'm going to have the, cheese. And it's really not any more complicated than that when you're faced with your ballot to decide which candidate do I want most, which candidate do I want second most, and so on down the line. Okay, let's take a look at a question about the CMP corridor. Proponents of the CMP corridor have been representing it as I did speak to the effect of mega dams in terms of the methane that they produce, and so their greenhouse gas emission footprint is very, very high. The CMP corridor is a bad idea. The Indigenous people who live in Canada in the areas that have been flooded by these mega dams report that their traditional food gathering, their hunting and fishing ways of life have been, imagine if you will, an area the size of the state of Vermont that is flooded with 14 inches of water. All the vegetation dies. They talk about the smell. We've all been down to the wetlands or the marsh at a time when it's warm weather, and that smell is really, really something. The Indigenous people, it's unbelievable. It kills the fish, and it's dangerous when it freezes and it gets cold and the smell isn't so bad anymore because the dam operators keep lowering and increasing the water level depending on how much profit they want to make running the water through the dams. And so people riding on the ice on a snowmobile suddenly fall through the ice because it's gone up and down. Also, the other reason that it's not environmentally friendly is that Massachusetts voted on the understanding that it would help that state meet some pretty ambitious carbon reduction goals that they had made, and they were told that, oh, this is clean energy. So the people that I know in Massachusetts, Green Party people in Massachusetts said, no, this was not really discussed thoroughly. No one really knew the details. People in Massachusetts voted So actually, this electric power is not actually that environmentally friendly like we're being told. The other thing about running electricity over, high from the Canadian Maine border, which is pretty far up there, all the way down to Massachusetts, is it's not an efficient way of generating and using electricity. You lose a lot of the electricity by running it so far away. It would be the electricity close to where it's going to be used in a kind of a microgrid, small area, using a variety of ways to generate it. And then those microgrids could hook up to the bigger grid as needed. If they had surplus energy, they could hook up and provide the grid with it. If they needed some energy, they could hook up to the grid and get a friendly way to go about generating and using electricity. So one of the things that struck me about the CMP corridor is it is opposition to this project cuts across all political, socioeconomic belief systems and parts of Maine. I was in a bookstore in Farmington, Maine, where the power line would come pretty close to, and the owner said, every time I have a book signing, the authors arrive at my doorstep going, what is this CMP corridor? I've seen like 300 no CMP corridor signs while I was driving here. So it's really interesting to me that a few government officials that probably can see the profit potential of the CMP corridor favor it, but the vast majority of Mainers do not favor this project. I went to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers public hearing about the corridor back in December, and they had to open a second ballroom to accommodate the crowd. They had 2 microphones set up, people that were speaking in favor of the project and people that were speaking against the project. Maybe a dozen people spoke and 100 people that wanted to speak against the project. They extended the hearing, and then finally around 10 o'clock at night, they said, I'm really sorry. We just can't, we're too tired. We have to stop. And there were still people that wanted to say why they didn't want the project to go through. Government that reflects the needs of corporations and wealthy people, then we're probably going to get the corridor. But if we have government that reflects regular people, working people, and what they want, Maine is vacation land. People come here to hunt, fish, enjoy canoeing on a beautiful lake, good for the tourism business that, is a pretty significant part of Maine's economy. One of the things I didn't say when I was telling you about myself earlier is I'm the only non-millionaire in this Senate race. All the other candidates are that a multi-millionaire understands what working people are struggling with and what their needs are. They just can't. And I'm married to a self-employed woodworker. My husband does fine woodwork, and I've been working as a school teacher for 25 years. Before that, I owned a successful, how hard it is to be a successful small business in Maine. You have healthcare costs for yourself and your employees. You have lots of regulations. You're dependent on the tourist business, the tourist season. It's a difficult way to make a living. The Senate can really understand what regular Mainers are going through. As I do, you would want to rank me first. All right. Here's an interesting one. This is a question from Ann Summer. The legislative branch must act collectively if it is to perform less. As citizens, however, we seemingly evaluate our candidates' worthiness solely on the acceptability of their individual stances. We appear to be satisfied with indicators of busy, not addressing questions to candidates about their abilities to actually do the job in our current times. I will practice with you to ask, how do you know you can deliver? Or how will you get any of your important issues taken up by your colleagues? And I'm glad that you asked it, Anne, because part of my background is while I was elected vice president and chief negotiator for the local bargaining unit, the teachers union, the Maine Education Association in the district where I worked. And I did that on the project of running for the US Senate. It's been interesting to me how many parallels there are between those two roles. When I was a chief negotiator, my first job was to listen to constituents, the membership of that local bargaining. Health care? Was it protecting salaries? Was it working conditions? Was it protecting other benefits? And, besides the things that were important to them, how did they sort of rank those things? Which ones were they like, well, we could trade that maybe if we got something that's more important to us? It was really important for me to know what the constituents wanted and would support. So there was a lot of bargaining sessions. Then when I went to the table with my team as the chief negotiator, I was representing hundreds of people that were invisibly present there, that were counting on me to know what their priority, strongest ask, and then engage in the bargaining process where you listen to the other side say what their strongest ask is, and you start to look for common ground. What are things that maybe both sides want to achieve? Okay, those are easy. We can say we've agreed on those right off. Now let's get down to, okay, what are the two sides willing to, give up as a bargaining chip to get something else? Every time we were at the table, when the session ended, before we went home, and it could be pretty late at night, my team would always put out a brief communication to the membership. So in the morning when they came to school, there was a little message in their mailbox to let them know, we were in bargaining session last night. We made some progress here. You can't tell a lot of the details. It's a violation of the process rules, but you can let them know kind of, where it's at, where progress was made, and what the next steps are. I think that two-way communication is really important. As a US Senator, especially for a state as small as Maine, geographically it's not small, but Maine only has about a million voters anyway. It would be possible to really represent those constituents and really understand what they needed and what was important to them. And when you go to a legislative body like the US Senate, you're obviously going to have to engage in a lot of bargaining. People are going to be, entrenched interests that have been put there by corporate or wealthy people that want their interests to be, protected and served by the Senate. But to go there as a voice of the people, that would be a great honor to me. And I'm not afraid to say unpopular things. I'm not worried. I'm not there to make people like me. I'm there to let people know I'm willing to work. I'm willing to bargain. I'm willing to talk and listen. I'm willing to look for solutions. Something about me that just has, been a characteristic of me throughout life is I'm pretty good at thinking out of the proverbial box. When I get in any situation and I'm kind of have hit the wall, I'm pretty good at backing up a couple steps and looking at the big picture and thinking, are there other paths here we haven't considered? Are there other solutions that may be possible but not very evident? And I think that that is a skill that I would bring to the legislative body that is the Senate. People often ask me, what would you do your first day in the Senate? Well, I would call Bernie and I would meet with constituents from Maine that were in Washington, D.C. visiting. That would be, if I go in as a Green, which I can re-enroll as a Green after the election, I don't have to caucus with Democrats or Republicans. I could choose to form my own caucus. Is that the best path? It's hard to say. Who else will be elected to the Senate this year. We don't really know that, but I do know that there are other progressives already in the Senate who have achieved good things, who know how the system works there, and hopefully would be willing to have me as an ally and as somebody who was part of the team trying to get Americans, the health care that they need and trying to address the climate emergency. And, I feel confident that I'm good at working with other people and really finding solutions together. So I hope that answered your question, Anne. Let's see, what else have we got here? Daniel Klimovich, hope I'm pronouncing that right, Daniel, says, is there any other way I can help you win other than ranked choice voting, which I've already done? That's a great question. Of course there is. Word of mouth is probably the most powerful influencer in this election. You work with about why you ranked me first and how ranked choice voting works. Many people are still a little confused about whether ranked choice voting applies to this election, because there were some court cases about whether it applied to the president. The Supreme Court of the United States has said, yes, it will apply to the presidential election as well. But the Senate election, that law passed already a while ago. And in fact, the last Senate election, ranked choice voting was in play, and Senator first round, and so election over. So what do you see? I'm sorry. So the other way that you can help besides word of mouth, as I mentioned, is volunteer. You can go on our website, lisaformaine.org. You can click the action button. You can let us know how to contact you and what your skills are, what you like to work on. That would be super helpful. Also, donations are very much appreciated. We have staffed up as much as we're going to staff up, and I think we have a really good team in place, but we would like to do more advertising here in the final days of the election. Buying media time is expensive, but we did make a decision that we would only buy main media. So we're only buying main TV time, main radio time, main newspaper ads. We're only buying in Maine. There are a couple reasons for that. One reason is Maine journalism is struggling right now. There's a great economic recession due to the pandemic, and many of our newspapers and other media outlets are wondering how they're going to survive in the downturn. They've had far fewer, advertising revenues than they usually can count on. So we don't want them to go on. Is very important in a democracy. People need access to information. And so we decided, our opponents in the race have bought a lot of ads on social media platforms, Hulu, YouTube, and so forth, Facebook. That is sending money to Silicon Valley. That is not keeping money here in Maine where it can help. So, that's a major reason that we wanted to do that. And, it's kind of fun to see the back cover of Mainer. Mainer is a weekly, rather a monthly news magazine that's distributed in Southern Maine mostly. And last my campaign, they said People's Choice, and there was a pretty interesting article really giving some of the context of my campaign and who I am as a candidate. If you haven't read it, you can go online and look for it. So that was the September of Mainer. And so we took out a full page, full color ad showing a ranked choice voting ballot marked with ranking me first. And it's pretty exciting to keep that money and keep that energy here in Maine to improve our, ability to keep democracy going. Guys, you can volunteer for us, but most of all, talk to people that haven't voted yet and let them know why you chose me first and why. That's a good question from Judy Robbins, and I think we're nearing the end of our time. This might be the last question that I can answer. Judy says, why is Medicare for All essential as opposed to being given to the Affordable Care Act because it passed when President Obama was in office? The Affordable Care Act forces Americans to buy for-profit health insurance. If not, they are penalized. But the big problem that I hear from people who have that kind of, healthcare that they've had to buy there on the market is they can't afford to use it. The premiums are really high to begin with. So many of them buy a sort of catastrophic health from not being able to get care if they maybe were in an auto accident or something. But the premiums are pretty high even for that, and the deductibles are huge. So the deductible prescription drug prices are really high, and people cannot afford to use the health insurance that they have. We have to get the profit motive out of healthcare. For-profit and healthcare shouldn't even be in the same sentence together, in my opinion. Healthcare is not a commodity. Countries, all the other wealthy countries in the world, recognized this like after World War II and put in universal healthcare because healthcare is a human right. It's not something that only the rich should be able to have. Been tried, it's been a failure, and I think the time is long past for people in the US to get true universal health care that can really, address the problems that we're facing. So I am thinking that it may be close to 9 o'clock. Maybe I have time for one. Jeffrey Hodgkiss asks, my issue is nuclear war risk and the out of control bipartisan nuclear arms race that has reignited since 9/11. Please share what you think the Senate should do to help the doomsday clock move away from midnight instead of closer. That's a great question, Jeffrey. I think that we need to get back into the international agreements to de-escalate nuclear weapons that the US has unilaterally exited. We need to use diplomacy and recognize that nuclear war would be a threat to all life forms on the planet. Those are not weapons we should be building. We should not be investing money in building those kind of very destructive weapons. We need to be looking for ways to increase the peace rather than building up an arsenal of weapons that would, could annihilate the planet as a life support system for humans and many other species. So thank you for that question. I think over the recent years, I've seen the U.S. become more and more belligerent. They always go to a show of force and threats and applying violence. What happened to looking for all the possible avenues before going to, the last case scenario? The U.S. cannot continue on that path. It's not environmentally sustainable. It's not morally sustainable to always use violence and belligerence as the solution to conflicts. Conflicts mean we need to sit down at the table and listen to each other and look for solutions that we can all live with. What I'd like to do, and that's if you would like to see that spirit brought to the US Senate, then I am your candidate. Please rank me first and rank blue number 2 if that's your safety vote. And let's put the first green in the U.S. Senate. We can do this under ranked choice voting. I really appreciate all the confidence and support that has been expressed by so many of you. And I appreciate your being here with me tonight at this town hall. Thanks for your questions. Thanks for listening in. And hopefully we can address some more of the questions that we didn't get to during the town hall in the chat or the comments on the various platforms that we've been on. So we're in it to win it. And thanks for being here. Check us out at lisaformaine.org, and everyone be well. Thanks a lot. Good night.